Welcome to Mimileaks. Jeffrey Epstein, born in Brooklyn in 1953, was a wealthy financier accused of years-long criminal activity. He was found unresponsive in federal custody in 2019 while awaiting trial on trafficking charges. Authorities say that from the mid-90s to 2005, Epstein operated a network that trafficked minors across multiple states, with assistance from his longtime associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was later convicted. With renewed attention on Epstein's case, its handling, its unknowns, I decided to read his indictment. I'm considering covering Maxwell's indictment too, as they both provide insight that might otherwise be overlooked or forgotten, especially as the public continues to demand accountability for those who participated in, enabled, or knowingly ignored Epstein's illegal activities. These charges didn't just appear out of nowhere. In 2006, Florida prosecutors prepared an indictment, but it was sidelined by a secretive non-prosecution agreement. That deal, brokered by then U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, blocked federal charges. Acosta later became Labor Secretary under President Trump, but resigned in 2019 amid renewed scrutiny. Public backlash over his Epstein deal triggered fresh investigations, leading to Epstein's indictment in July of 2019. As we read through this, we'll follow its narrative sequence, condensing sections for clarity and redacting depraved content. This comes with the highest of content warnings. So let's begin with the overview section, but first, please like the video, it really helps on searches, and subscribe for more content like this. Now, let's get started. This is a federal criminal case in the Southern District of New York, and it's United States of America versus Jeffrey Epstein. Count 1 is trafficking conspiracy. To summarize the overview, from 2002 to 2005, Epstein ran a multi-state scheme targeting minors, relying on secrecy, deception, and personnel to conceal unlawful activity. His Manhattan and Palm Beach homes acted as operational hubs, staffed and structured to enable repeated visits by minors. Epstein allegedly paid recruits, often sourced by other young women, for arrangements that were framed as compensation based on social interactions. Unlawful acts occurred repeatedly, with minors subjected to exploitative behavior under a pattern described as deliberate and systematic. Factual background. During all time periods charged in this indictment, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, was a financier with multiple residents in the continental United States, including the New York residence and the Palm Beach residence. Beginning in at least 2002, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, enticed and recruited and caused to be enticed and recruited dozens of minor girls to engage in acts with him, after which Epstein paid the victims hundreds of dollars in cash at the New York residence and the Palm Beach residence. In both New York and Florida, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, perpetrated this abuse in similar ways. Victims were initially recruited to provide massages to Epstein, which would be performed without clothes or partially without clothes, and would become increasingly hostile, I'm sure, to the children in nature, and would typically include one or more acts. Epstein paid his victims hundreds of dollars in cash for each encounter. Moreover, Epstein actively encouraged certain of his victims to recruit additional girls to be similarly abused. Epstein incentivized his victims to become recruiters by paying these victim recruiters hundreds of dollars for each girl they brought to Epstein. In doing so, Epstein maintained a steady supply of new victims to exploit. The New York residence. At all times relevant to this indictment, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, possessed and controlled a multi-story private residence on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, New York. In other words, the New York residence. Between at least in or about 2002 and in or about 2005, Epstein abused numerous minor victims at the New York residence by causing these victims to be recruited to engage in paid intimate acts with him. When a victim arrived at the New York residence, she typically would be escorted to a room with a massage table, where she would perform a massage on Epstein, the defendant. The victims, who were as young as 14 years of age, were told by Epstein or other individuals to partially or fully undress before beginning the massage. During the encounter, Epstein would escalate the nature and scope of physical contact with his victims to include, among other things, intimate acts such as groping and indirect contact with victims' private parts. Epstein typically would also be pleasuring himself during these encounters, asking victims to touch him while he did so, and also touched victims with his hands or with toys. In connection with each encounter, Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, or one of his employees or associates, paid the victim in cash. Jeffrey Epstein, the defendant, knew that many of his New York victims were underage, including because certain victims told him their age. Further, once these minor victims were recruited, many were abused by Epstein on multiple subsequent occasions at the New York residence. Epstein sometimes personally contacted victims to schedule appointments at the New York residence. In other instances, Epstein directed employees and associates, including a New York-based employee, Employee 1, to communicate with victims via phone to arrange for these victims to return to the New York residence for additional intimate encounters with him. Additionally, and to further facilitate his ability to abuse minor girls in New York, Epstein asked and enticed certain of his victims to recruit additional girls to perform massages and similarly engage in intimate acts with Epstein. When a victim would recruit another girl for Epstein, he paid both the victim recruiter and the new victim hundreds of dollars in cash. Through these victim recruiters, Epstein gained access to and was able to abuse dozens of additional minor girls. In particular, certain recruiters brought dozens of additional minor girls to the New York residence to give massages and to engage in intimate acts with him. Epstein encouraged victims to recruit additional girls by offering to pay these victim recruiters for every additional girl they brought to Epstein. When a victim recruiter accompanied a new minor victim in New York, both the victim and the new minor victim were paid hundreds of dollars for each encounter. In addition, certain victim recruiters routinely scheduled these encounters through Employee 1, who sometimes asked the recruiters to bring a specific minor girl for Epstein. The Palm Beach residence. In addition to recruiting and abusing minors, the defendant created a similar network of minor girls to victimize in Palm Beach, Florida, where Epstein owned and possessed and controlled another large residence. It's called the Palm Beach residence. Epstein frequently traveled from New York to Palm Beach by private jet, before which an employee or associate would ensure that minor victims were available for encounters upon his arrival. At the Palm Beach residence, Epstein engaged in a similar course of abusive conduct. When a victim initially arrived at the Palm Beach residence, she'd be escorted to a room, sometimes by an employee, or at times two assistants, Employee 2 and Employee 3, who were also responsible for scheduling intimate encounters with minor victims. Once inside, the victim would provide a massage without clothes or partially without clothes for Epstein, who would also be without clothes. During these encounters, Epstein would escalate the nature and scope of the physical contact to include certain acts like groping and direct and indirect contact with the victim's privates. Epstein would also typically pleasure himself during these encounters and asked victims to touch him while he was doing so, and touch them as well with his hands or toys. In connection with each of these encounters, Epstein, the defendant, or one of his employees or associates paid the victims in cash. Victims typically were paid hundreds of dollars for each encounter. Epstein, the defendant, knew that certain of his victims were underage, including because certain victims told him. In addition, as with New York-based victims, many Florida victims, once recruited, were abused by Epstein on multiple additional occasions. Epstein, who during the relevant time period was frequently in New York, would arrange for Employee 2 or other employees to contact victims by phone in advance of his travel to Florida to ensure appointments were scheduled for when he arrived. In particular, in certain instances, Employee 2 placed phone calls to minor victims in Florida to schedule encounters at the Palm Beach residence. At the time of certain of these phone calls, Epstein and Employee 2 were in New York. Additionally, certain of the individuals were victimized at the Palm Beach residence and were contacted by phone by Employee 3 to schedule these encounters. Moreover, as in New York, to ensure a steady stream of minor victims, Epstein asked and enticed certain victims in Florida to recruit other girls to engage in intimate acts. He paid hundreds of dollars to victim recruiters for each additional girl they brought to the Palm Beach residence. We finished the factual allegations, which describe what happened, and statutory allegations connect those facts to specific legal violations defined by federal statutes. From at least in or about 2002 up to and including in or about 2005 in the SDNY and elsewhere, Epstein and others, known and unknown, willfully and knowingly, did combine, conspire, confederate, and agree together and with each other to commit an offense against the United States, to wit, trafficking of minors. It was a part and object of the conspiracy that Epstein and others, known and unknown, would and did, in and affecting interstate and foreign commerce, recruit, entice, harbor, transport, provide, and obtain by any means a person and to benefit financially and by receiving anything of value from participation in a venture which has engaged in any such act, knowing that the person had not attained the age of 18 years and would be caused to engage in a commercial act, overt acts, in furtherance of the conspiracy and to effect the illegal object thereof. The following overt acts, among others, were committed in the SDNY and elsewhere. A. In or about 2004, Epstein enticed and recruited multiple minor victims, including minor victims identified herein as minor victim 1, minor victim 2, and minor victim 3, to engage in intimate acts with him at his residences in Manhattan, New York, and Palm Beach, Florida, after which he provided them with hundreds of dollars in cash for each encounter. In or about 2002, minor victim 1 was recruited to engage in intimate acts with Epstein and was repeatedly abused by him at his New York residence over a period of years and was paid hundreds of dollars for each encounter. Epstein also encouraged and enticed minor victim 1 to recruit other girls to engage in paid intimate acts, which she did. Epstein asked minor victim 1 how old she was, and victim 1 answered truthfully. In or about 2004, employee 1, located in the SDNY and on behalf of Epstein, placed a telephone call to minor victim 1 in order to schedule an appointment with victim 1 to engage in paid intimate acts with Epstein. In or about 2004, minor victim 2 was recruited to engage in acts with Epstein and was repeatedly abused by him in Palm Beach for over a period of years and was paid hundreds of dollars after each encounter. Epstein also encouraged victim 2 to recruit other girls, which she did. In or about 2005, employee 2, located in the SDNY, on behalf of Epstein, placed a call to minor victim 2 and scheduled an appointment to engage in paid intimate acts with him. In or about 2005, minor victim 3 was recruited to engage in acts with Epstein, repeatedly abused by him in Palm Beach for over a period of years, and was paid hundreds of dollars for each encounter. He also encouraged and enticed victim 3 to recruit girls, which she did. He asked her how old she was, and she answered truthfully. In or about 2005, employee 2, located in the SDNY on Epstein's behalf, called victim 3 in Florida to schedule an appointment to engage in paid intimate acts with Epstein. In or about 2004, employee 3 placed a telephone call to victim 3 to schedule an appointment to engage in intimate acts with Epstein. Count 2, trafficking. The grand jury further charges the allegations said previously are repeated and realleged from 2002 to 2005 in the SDNY. Epstein, willfully and knowingly, in and affecting interstate and foreign commerce, did recruit, entice, harbor, transport, provide, and obtain by any means a person knowing that the person had not yet attained the age of 18 years and would be caused to engage in a commercial act, and did aid and abet the same. To wit, Epstein recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, provided, and obtained numerous individuals who were less than 18 years old, including, but not limited to, minor victim 1, as described above, and who were caused to engage in at least one commercial act in Manhattan, New York. Forfeiture allegations. As a result of committing the alleged offense of trafficking, the following shall be forfeited to the government, and I'm going to summarize here. Any property used or intended to be used to commit or to facilitate the commission of a crime, any property obtained from proceeds obtained as a result of the office, any property traceable to the above, and specifically the townhouse on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. That parcel of land, the building, the fixtures, and all of the things. The substitute asset provision allows seizure of equivalent property if original assets are unavailable due to the defendant's actions, such as because it can't be located, has been transferred or sold, placed beyond the court's jurisdiction, has diminished in value, or has been commingled with other property that isn't able to be separated. Thanks for watching. I'm committed to presenting legal and historical material with clarity and care. So if that sounds like something you'd want to hear more of, please make sure you like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss it. Your support helps us keep these stories thoughtful, respectful, and accessible.